What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Spot Media YouTube channel. My name is Barnard, and today I am here to break down the story of the sports world right now. The Colorado football team's off to a 3-0 start, climbed to 18th in the AP poll. I want to talk a little bit about Deion Sanders specifically, what he's doing for the sport, and mainly dive into how he got to the spot that he was at. That one of the more impressive pathways, and one of the more successful human beings to ever walk this earth. So I just want to talk a little bit about the path that he got to ultimately being crowned as the king of Colorado in the way that he currently is, and just where we are, how we got here. So let's hit that intro and let's get right into it.
Indeed, driving, spinning, fading, 1.1 to go! Oh my goodness, Tyrese Maxey!
Daniel House fills the lane and fills it up.
All right, so for starters, it is no secret the success of Colorado football. They're 3-0 on the season. They've made a splash right to kick off the year by taking down TCU, who might not be as good as they were last year, making the college football playoff, losing the championship, lost a lot of talent, but nonetheless, the Colorado Buffaloes were significant underdogs. They managed to produce the victory, got the job done, and that has only spiraled from here. They're 3-0 in the season. They most recently took down Colorado State in a double overtime thriller. They're up to 18th in the AP poll, and they are proving themselves as legitimate threats to the college football world. And at the heart of it is Deion Sanders, a coach that is beating to his own drum, doing it in an unapologetic way, in a way that we really not have seen. I mean, just think about the eyeballs that are on Colorado football right now. Think about on Saturday night that they have Quavo getting out the house. They got Kawhi Leonard standing in the crowd. The Rock is on the sideline. Think about we are sitting in front of our TVs that I couldn't wait for Florida versus Tennessee to be flipped off my screen so I could watch the Colorado Buffaloes play. Think about how insane that is, but that's where we're at, and I don't see that changing anytime this season or really as long as Deion Sanders chooses to stay at Colorado. But before we get to what exactly is going on with the Buffaloes right now and the outlook for this season, I just want to talk on Deion specifically. That I think with all the headlines, with all the notable quotes, everything else that is surrounding the program right now, with these storylines like Shedeur Sanders, like Travis Hunter, all these other things, it gets lost just how special Deion Sanders is as a human being and as successful in every walk of life that he has tried his hand in. And I want to start off with on the football or on the athletic field and just his accomplishments as an athlete. That it is no secret that this guy is one of the greatest athletes to ever touch the world, to ever make his impact anywhere. And that starts all the way back. That we know Deion Sanders grew up in Florida. He went to college at Florida State. And I want to start there with some of his accomplishments that he racked up there. So he enrolled at Florida State and played 3 sports for the school: football, baseball, and track. Beginning in his freshman year, he started in the Seminole secondary, played outfield for the baseball team, which finished 5th in the nation, by the way, and helped lead the track and field team to a conference championship. Sanders was a 2-time consensus All-American cornerback in 1987 and 1988, as well as a 3rd-team All-American in 1986. Overall, he intercepted 14 passes in his college career, including 3 in Pro Bowl games, and managed to return 1 interception for 100 yards and a touchdown, which broke the record for longest return longest return on an interception there. In addition, he still made his impact felt on the baseball field. Under head coach Mike Martin at Florida State, Sanders batted .331 in 1986, also compiled 27 stolen bases in 1987. Those are solid statistics right there. And in addition, that he still did his thing on the track field as well, that he still made his runs on the track. And an example of this is on May 16th in 1987, Sanders played in a conference semifinal baseball game against Southern Mississippi, ran a leg of a 4x100 relay, and then returned to play in the baseball championship against Cincinnati's. Though Sanders relay team did not place in the event, the FSU track team was the overall conference championship, and the baseball team won conference title as well. I mean, what in the Troy Bolton are we talking about right now? That is stuff that is just not seen in real life, of him managing to do all this, to juggle all this, and be successful at each of these. This is not a story like, even if you want to compare to Michael Jordan, who obviously stepped away from baseball for a little bit, or stepped away from basketball to try his hand at baseball, and he never really was able to make it up, that he never turned himself into a good enough hitter to survive at the professional level, to climb up the minor leagues in the way that I think he desired. And that drove him crazy. And he ultimately wandered back to basketball, where he eventually dominated for a couple more years. But that is not Deion Sanders. This is a guy who is a competent and even above average player on each of these things. So he gets through his time at Florida State and ultimately makes the professional leap. He had a 9-year part-time baseball playing career, playing left and center field, and he also did most of his damage on the football field. So throughout his professional field on the baseball side of things, that he played for the New York Yankees, the Atlanta Braves, the Cincinnati Reds, the San Francisco Giants, and the Cincinnati Reds once again, as well as the Toronto Blue Jays. He also made a strong impact in the NFL. That was where most of his damage and where he's most well known the most. He is a Hall of Famer. He is an 8-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champion, Hall of Fame All 1990s team, and a number of other. The 1994 AP Defensive Player of the Year. He broke several records, led the league in several categories, and made his impact felt on all sides of the ball. That he was a cornerback, he played some wide receiver / running back, he was a punt returner, and set records at each of these places. For example, on the kick and punt returns, he led the NFL in kick return yardage in 1992. He also led the NFL in punt return yardage per game in 1998, as well as the most punt return touchdowns, and had similar effects, both especially in the corner department as well. That he led the NFL with longest reception or interception return in 1990, most yards off interceptions in 1994, as well as most touchdowns and interceptions there. Just a number of off the chart stats for Deion Sanders that are really impressive. The more I look at these stats in front of me, I am pretty bewildered there. So just to put a bow on some of the accomplishments of Deion Sanders as a professional athlete, during his 14-year NFL career, Sanders was a perennial All-Pro and one of the strongest pass defenders to ever play the game. He also occasionally lined up with the offense. During the 1996 season, he skipped the baseball season, concentrated on football, and attended the first NFL training camp of his career to better familiarize himself with the nuances of the wide receiver position, and then became the second two-way starter in the NFL only since Chuck Penderek. Sanders is the only man to play in both a Super Bowl and a World Series, the only man to hit an MLB home run and score an NFL touchdown in the same week, and also to have both a reception and an interception in the Super Bowl. He's one of 7 players to win back-to-back Super Bowls with different teams. He's also one of 2 players to score an NFL touchdown in 6 different ways, those being an interception return, a punt return, a kickoff return, a receiving touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a fumble recovery. During his career, Sanders intercepted 53 passes for 1,331 yards, which is an average of 25.1 yards per return. He recovered 4 fumbles, returned 155 kickoffs for 3,523 yards, gained 2,199 yards on 212 punt returns, while also catching 60 passes for 784 yards. In total, he amassed 7,838 all-purpose yards and scored 22 touchdowns, had 9 interception returns, 6 punt returns, 3 kickoff returns, 3 receiving, and 1 fumble recovery. His 19 defensive and return touchdowns were an NFL record, were recently broken by Devin Hester. In the postseason, Sanders also added 5 more interceptions and 3 more interception receptions for 95 yards, 4 carries for 39 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was selected to 8 Pro Bowls and won the NFL Defensive Player of the Year award in 1994. The bottom line is he is that dude. That this is impressive stuff. This is freakish stuff. This is video game type of caliber production that Deion Sanders just straight up did. This happened. That this is who he is. That is what he became. And then the post Deion playing career is arguably even more impressive for what he did, because beyond just the manner, just beyond just doing these things, it was the way that he did it that kind of changed things. He was prime. He was prime time. He was Deion Sanders. He had his little high step, had his little dance, had his little hop that he did. He did it unapologetically. He was himself, and that has translated to life post playing. And all that attitude, all that flashiness, the swag, the drip, the necklace, the showy clothes, everything about Deion Sanders has carried with him into his post-playing life. And that has brought him in a couple different directions. For starters, that Sanders began in the media world, that we've seen him do some stuff with CBS Sports, with Barstool Sports, that he did a number of different analysis kind of positions, announcing positions. He's made his way in a number of different roles, whether it be in a play-by-play situation, which he did for a part in time, some ESPN segments, which he did, as well as just some normal radio show kind of gigs, and just breakdowns of college football that we saw he got a taste of that world, how that functions, before he eventually made the shift over to coaching. I think that has helped him know how to market in a way that he understands what these media corporations are looking for. And some of this obviously comes natural to him with the way that he is, the way that he does things, and just who he is as a human being. There is some eyeballs on Deion Sanders because he's Deion Sanders. But I also think that he understands the intricacies of how these things work in a way that a lot of coaches don't, or either don't appreciate, don't care to learn, or just outright kind of deny that they want to focus on football. That is their lane. That has not been Deion Sanders. But you know what? If you're winning games, who cares? And it makes it all the better from a valuation standpoint, from an eyeball standpoint, from a future recruiting standpoint, if you can check both those boxes. And by that, I mean having success on the football field and making sure everyone knows about it. And no one does that better than Deion Sanders. Now, once he gets kind of past his media career, he still has a little bit of a toe in that water, and he makes his appearances quite often on just about a number of different platforms there. But he did jump into the coaching world. And this is one of the cooler aspects of Deion Sanders, I believe, because it's not always the case where superstars translate into good coaches. Oftentimes, the guys that are the best coaches in their sports are more of the grinders, the more cerebral, the guys that it takes the work hard, not the natural athletes in the way that I would consider Deion Sanders. Not that I'm saying Deion is not a smart guy. He's obviously incredibly intelligent and that he knows what he's doing. But he was a guy that is a superstar, was kind of in a position, and those players, those types of guys or players do not always work out when it comes to the coaching ranks. And that has been far from the case with Deion Sanders. So he started his coaching career at the high school level. So while continuing to work as an NFL analyst, Sanders became the head coach of Prime Prep Academy, which he co-founded this back in 2015. He stayed as a head coach, or I'm sorry, in 2012 and 2013. Then in 2015, he was hired as the head coach of AAA Academy, where he was the coach of for 2 seasons. In 2017, he became the offensive coordinator for Trinity Christian High School, giving him the opportunity to coach his sons Silo and Shadur Sanders, along with his eldest son, Deion Jr. This also is a part of the story which I think has gotten lost a little bit. I know there's plenty of attention on it, but to me, I just can't get over how cool it is for him to physically be coaching his kids in the way and for them to be straight up ballers. There's no nepotism in there. There's no that he is showing favoritism to his kids. Shadur Sanders is the real deal. Shiloh Sanders is the real deal. Sanders with 2 forced fumbles in the most recent game against Colorado State, or 1 forced fumble, 1 pick six, take that all the way to the house in their first score of the game. And Shadur Sanders has looked like a borderline Heisman Trophy candidate for most of this year, from throwing for over 500 yards in week 1 to just picking defenses apart, leading those game-winning drives, talking about entering Brady mode at the end of that one. I've been incredibly impressed with his pocket awareness, his composure, just the way that he's able to steer the ship. He's almost a pure pocket passer, and then every once in a while he'll bust one out and run one, and you say, okay, so he does have some legs. He does have something there. But I've been very impressed with his ability to just break down a defense, read the game, and make the right decisions. He's been incredible so far this year, and that is a nod to Deion for obviously him being his son, all the work that they've put in, and everything else that is coming together now. Now, following the time in high school with both of his boys graduating, Sanders did take the job at Jackson State. And this is where we really started to get wind of Deion Sanders as a head coach, seeing like who he is on such a big stage. So on September 21st, 2020, Deion Sanders became the 21st head coach of the Jackson State Tigers. That is a historically black university in HBCU. The Tigers play in the second level of NCAA football, the Division I football championship subdivision, so FCS there. And in his first season in the spring of 2021, it was abbreviated and delayed from its normally intended schedule due to the COVID-19 disruption. So he had to jump through the hoops that we as a society and everyone was kind of figuring out what to make of that. But he did lead the Tigers to a 4-3 record with 1 win by forfeit. And then in the fall of 2021, when things began to get back to some normalcy, Sanders led the Tigers to the Southwestern Athletic Conference title and with a program record of 11 wins. He also was named the recipient in the fall of 21 of the Eddie Robinson Award as the season's top FCS head coach. And then Jackson State went to play in the 2021 Celebration Bowl, where they were defeated by South Carolina State 31-10. The following season, Jackson State again played in the Celebration Bowl, where they lost once again, this time to North Carolina Central, which brings Coach Sanders' overall bowl record to 0-2. If I had to guess, I would say it does not finish his career with a losing bowl record there. Now, one of the most notable stories was the Travis Hunter situation. Sanders flipped the recruitment of cornerback / wide receiver Travis Hunter, who was the number 1 overall recruit in the 2022 class. I've honestly been a little surprised of all the love of Travis Hunter of late. Not that he doesn't deserve every bit of it, but I'm just surprised that people don't understand how good this guy is at this point in time. He balled out at Jackson State, and you know what? Even 2 stops later, him going to Jackson State and out to Colorado, he's still the number 1 recruit in the country. That you circle every single player from the 2022 class, he was number 1 for a reason, and he still is that guy. And obviously prayers up because he is battling an injury off that dirty hit from Colorado State there. So hopefully Travis Hunter is okay, but he's another guy who is just kind of one of these role models, these breaking barriers guys, Deion allowing him to play on both sides of the ball. And if there is any guy who could give some advice on that, it's Deion Sanders. Because you know what? He's done it at the highest level, not just across positions, but across sports. This is a guy who knows balancing a body, making sure that they're working to the best of their ability and not overdoing it in a way that I just don't think any other coach would have been equipped to do. So I do think this is a match made in heaven. This is perfect. And Travis Hunter, by the way, is truly that dude. So he has been incredible to start this year, and I hope that he gets rested up and healthy soon. So Hunter initially was committed to Florida State, which is where Sanders went to college, and then the move was one of the biggest signing day moments in the history of college football, as he elected to go to the HBCU, go to Jackson State, play for Deion Sanders, and that was just kind of one of those moments of Deion has arrived. So Sanders overall led Jackson State to a 27-6 record during his 3 seasons at the helm, and then made his transfer to Colorado on December 3rd, 2022. So this is kind of where we're at. I just want to dive into what has gone on so far this season. Number one, leading up, the transfers. That Deion Sanders made it very clear that he was here for a purpose. He was here to shake some tides, to change things, and change the overall perspective. And boy, has he done this. I mean, heading into this season, Colorado had 49 total 48 incoming transfers, which is the number one in the country. The next highest in that is Arizona State with 29 incoming standards. So 19 more transfers than the next highest across the entire country. But it isn't just the sheer number of them that it's impressive, it is the quality. That no program has experienced more roster turnover this offseason than Colorado since the arrival of Deion Sanders. The Buffaloes added 48 transfers this season, accounting for 26.2% of the Pac-12 conference total incoming transfer. The class is headlined by the number one player in the transfer rankings, which is, of course, Travis Hunter, who followed his head coach to Boulder, the two-way playmaker at cornerback and wide receiver. They also landed some of the top players at their respective respective positions. There's quarterback Shedeur Sanders, who also came from Jackson State, and is Sanders' son, obviously. The number 8 linebacker in Demoy Kennedy, who came from Alabama. The number 9 running back in Alton McCaskill. I apologize there. He came from Houston. The bottom line is these were not nobodies. That when you are Deion Sanders, when you have this magnitude or this gravity towards you, you can get these guys. And we are seeing that on the biggest stage in Colorado, that this is no flash in the pan. And by the way, to bring up both the Suns specifically here, these are guys that I mentioned that they've more than proved it, but they've been doing it for quite some time. For example, Shiloh, he played defensive back for South Carolina for 2 seasons before transferring to Jackson State in 2020. And then Shedeur, he was verbally committed to Florida Atlantic, which is still a pretty solid football school, before flipping and committing to Jackson State. So if Deion was not these guys' dads, that if you take the Sanders out of the equation here, both these guys are legitimate top-tier prospects. And I want to reinforce that they should not be forgotten in the whole thing. So where do things go from here? What is next for Deion Sanders and Colorado? It feels like they're on top of the world. It feels like things can't get much higher than this, but I'm not convinced that that is the case. They have a tough schedule this year. They have a real test with Oregon coming up, and it doesn't get any easier from this. That there's going to be a matchup with USC and Caleb Williams, a number of other ranked opponents. It is not an easy path for the Buffaloes from here. But if anyone can do it, it's Deion Sanders. And I love everything about him being unapologetic, him making sure everyone knows, him calling the shot, him giving out shades when there's the comments made, when the shade comes to him, that he hands it right back to the kids and all these things. You can see how every single person is buying what he's selling within that locker room, within that community, within that organization, and nationally. We will never see a program turn around, see this type of magnitude that we are seeing with Colorado. And for all those kind of being critical of Deion Sanders changing college football when it comes to him utilizing the transfer market, him bringing in all these guys, it won't happen, because there will never be another Deion Sanders. There is no other coach other than Deion Sanders who could be doing what he's doing at Colorado. There is no coach that has these connections, has this ability, has this magnitude and gravity as a personality that Deion Sanders does, that he is one of one, and there is no other human being that could be in his position and produce these type of results. So from here, we will see what happens. That Deion Sanders truly is putting forth one of the most impressive cultural and just organizational just transitions that we've ever seen. That the way Colorado has flipped the switch to become one of the most notable college football programs of the year is beyond impressive. and I don't think it's going anywhere. And for what's next for Deion, the sky is the limit. That whatever this guy wants to do in life, I am bought into. That I believe in him. If an NFL team comes a calling, if the Dallas Cowboys decide this year that Mike McCarthy's not the guy and we are handing you the reins, I believe Deion can do it. If a bigger program, if a Florida wants to give a call and say, come bring the Deion show down here, I believe he can do it. There is not an obstacle too high for Deion Sanders to clear. I am done doubting this guy to any extent, and I can't wait to watch how things go the rest of the season. This truly is one of the more amazing stories in all of sports throughout our entire lifetimes, and I just can't wait to be watching every single second of Colorado football that I can from here on out. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the full process that's going down in Colorado. What you thought from watching them play this year. I appreciate you guys for tuning in this. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk with you next time here on Pick Swap Media.